planet and perish slow. We don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. Whoa, whoa.
Okay, the time moving on now to 29 minutes onto the hour of 9 o'clock. And as I said earlier, we did promise to do a special discussion this evening on the request from the U.S. For Grenada to host military radar and military personnel. To this point, Grenada has not responded to the request. The Prime Minister did promise to make some remarks last week. However, the Parliament was adjourned for, some little issues, and so Parliament will sit again next Tuesday, and hopefully that matter or some comments relating to that matter will be addressed. However, it is what is trending, and many people are, voicing and sharing their opinion on this issue. Some people are a little concerned. Some people are concerned a lot. Some people are confused. People are anxious. And so I think information is important to share with people so that we have a better understanding of what this request is all about, and whether or not it would make sense for Grenada to accept or reject. And we would look at that also from the angle of international law. We started that discussion last Monday. But it's important to understand, a request like that and, juxtapose it to international law and see where we are. Mr. Ruggkes Ferguson is with me this evening, and we will be joined also by Mr. Siddiqui Sylvester to, further discuss this issue. So I just want to, before I bring in Mr. Ferguson, I just want to share with you just a sort of definition of international law and what it's all about. And I think that would probably set the stage nice for the discussion we're about to have. So international law is the body of rules and principles that govern the relations between sovereign states. Now, this is very important here. That govern the relations between sovereign states, international organizations, and increasingly individuals. It covers a wide range of issues, including human rights, international trade, environmental protection, diplomacy, and the law of armed conflict. Its sources include treaties, customary law, and general principles of law. All right. So, just briefly, an idea as to what international law is, and so we will talk about that request in relation to that. So, it is a good time to welcome Mr. Ferguson. Good evening and welcome. It's good to be back with you. Usually, when we have our discussions, we usually run out of time very quickly, but we have a little more time this evening to sort of go into some more details and try as much as possible to share with our listeners and viewers some more about what is now before us. So good evening and welcome.
Yes, good evening, Godfrey, and good evening to all your listeners and viewers. And I look forward to an engaging program, an informative one, and wish to congratulate you again for ensuring that so many of these topical issues are discussed and for contributing so substantially to the education of our people.
Yes, indeed. Well, we try. We think it's important. It is something that the GBN is passionate about, always trying to share information. And so once these things come up, we make our platform available so that information can be shared with our listeners and viewers. So, Mr. Ferguson, I just sort of briefly shared with us what international law is and the whole principle behind international law. In our case, I think the whole issue of armed conflict and peace is at the forefront here. We all are aware of the request that was made by the U.S. for Grenada to temporarily host military radar equipment and personnel. Now, I have heard of some other requests that was made. However, I have not seen any documentation on it, so I'm not sure I'm in a position to speak of it. I've heard things like deportees and building a prison, and these are things I've heard, by the way. So I really don't know for certain if these were all part of this whole thing, or there were requests that was made before, and so I would leave that there, just highlighting it. But to start our discussion, the request made by the U.S. as it relates to international law, is it a fair request to make of Grenada? We are a very small island. We don't even have a military. We have our police force, but of course our police force is to maintain peace and law within our country. We don't have a military. We can't fight any war. If Carrico attack us, we're losing. So we're not in a position to deal with that. So is it a fair request? I mean, considering what international law speaks about.
Yes. Okay, Godfrey, I think an excellent start with your definition of international law. And we really want to keep it as simple as possible, not technical, so that our listeners and viewers can, understand some of these concepts. And critical in that definition are two words. Well, three words: rules, mm-hmm. and sovereign states.
Sovereign states, yes.
Oh, right. So that's just what international law is about: rules, and these are the rules that govern the relationship between states. So if in a little organization, the organization has rules, the organization might have a constitution, whatever you call it, and those are the rules. Mm-hmm. Those are the rules that govern the organization. So you have domestic law, and you also have international law. Domestic law constitutes the rules that govern the internal affairs of your state. It's domestic, and therefore it's confined to your jurisdiction or geographical space. So, for example, as close as we are to St. Vincent, our laws do not apply to St. Vincent. If a Vincentian is arrested and charged for an offense committed in Grenada's waters, then that trial takes place in accordance with not Vincentian law, but Grenadian law. So there's the domestic, which is geographical space, and the rules that govern that. And there are all kinds of different rules that govern different aspects of life, whether it's civil matters, criminal matters, constitutional matters, administrative law matters, whatever, family matters, land matters. There are rules and laws that govern that. And international law just extends the relationship between states, how states resolve disputes among themselves. And in the context of the international law of which we speak, it is important to understand, for example, some of the key structures that regulate international law to make sure part of the noble objective in international law is to ensure peace in the world.
Yes.
Peace in the world. Mutual respect among nations. Small as Petit Martinique, or you can be as large as China, the United States, Canada, and these countries. We are all equal in the eyes of international law. And when I say equal, it may not be in terms of wealth, but how we are treated. We are treated because part of the principles of international law is really equality and respect. Mm-hmm. Very simple concepts that we can apply to our own lives. So, for example, not because an individual is big and bad and muscular and has means, it means that he can disrespect another and take advantage of another, because there are laws that protect these individuals. Even as part of it, and these parallels are very important to understand. So we have, for example, domestic violence. We have a domestic violence act that protects partners in a relationship or people in a household. You can't abuse, whether it's physically, psychologically, or otherwise. As I frequently say, the law is there to protect the weak against the strong. Mm-hmm. So that the strong does not take advantage of the weak. In international law, it is simple. You have respect for other people and nations. And it is not governed by your size, the amount of weapons that you have, and the extent of your respective armies. And that's why there is something called the United Nations. Mm-hmm. In fact, the United Nations, and it's always important, you know, we hear these concepts, we hear about these institutions, and sometimes not understand the significance of them. Because the United Nations was established in 1945, immediately after World War II. Mm-hmm. World War II. And World War II followed not too long after World War I.
Yeah, that's right.
1914 to 1918, which took 22 million deaths. And after that, because as Prime Minister Mia Mottley made a very significant point recently, is that, listen, even during a war, you sit and negotiate to end the war. Why can't you sit and negotiate to stop the war from happening?
Mm-hmm. To prevent it, that's right.
To prevent it, because you, at some point, somebody gives in and you go across the table. That's what history has shown, that you go across the table to try to end the war. That was done after World War I in 1918, and you had 22 million deaths. 22 million deaths from a war that essentially it's about political control, geopolitics, who controls where, who controls their power across the globe. In not long after, you had the Second World War. And after the First World War, the cry after 22 million deaths was never again war. Never again war. Let us come together to prevent war. That didn't stop the Second World War. And after the tally of civilian deaths after World War II, it's estimated between 50 and 55 million people, human beings dying, and that's civilians as a result of war. And when you add it to the military personnel who fell in the Second World War, it climbs up to over 75 million people or thereabouts. So you're talking about 3 times World War I, the deaths in World War II. And that's when nations of the world involved in the war came together, and out of that the United Nations was formed. They say, listen, let us establish a forum where nations of the world can belong, a forum that promotes peace, that promotes dialogue for the resolution of disputes. And that's the purpose of the United Nations. And in the United Nations sits all of these independent countries of the world, irrespective of your politics or otherwise. You sit there and you debate issues. And usually the General Assembly of the United Nations meets September, October, where you have first the foreign ministers speak, and then you have the prime ministers speak, and most speak about peace. The overwhelming majority speak about peace and dialogue to settle disputes. Might is right has no place in international law. Your size. So when the United States speaks to Grenada, right, sovereign nations, Grenada is an independent country celebrating 50 years of independence. 50 years of independence, and that is after hundreds of years under slavery, centuries under slavery. And what was slavery? It was about control of our people. Control to the extent that they could be bought and sold. And many don't understand, history and internalize history that way. We read about slavery in the book, so people then go through it. That is what the ancestors went through. The horrors of being taken from Africa and across to the Caribbean, with just probably most dying, to come to develop the wealth of other nations. Right? That's part of the history. And that's why, Bob Marley's song rings so true today. Because slavery was abolished in 1838, and that's physical slavery. But the mental slavery, and that's why I say free. You need to free our minds. Free our minds. We have freed our bodies, but we have to free our minds, because the psychological effect of slavery has left us thinking that we are inferior, thinking that other nations are superior to us, and that we must genuflect to them.
Right.
And that's what the history, same with colonialism. If I just make this point quickly, colonialism. We are owned, we are colony, we were owned by somebody else. We cannot determine our internal affairs, we cannot determine our external affairs. We moved to associated statehood, which gave more autonomy to us to run our internal affairs, and eventually independence, which meant that we control both our internal and external affairs. 50 years ago. So that is the context in which we must recognize these things. We have people that have been controlled by others. And it's time we build our own identity. We build our own Caribbean. And that is why there is a CARICOM. That is why there's a Treaty of Chaguaramas and an amended treaty that now we can speak about among our countries. We speak about free movement of people, free movement of capital, free movement of services, labor. That is what we're trying to build.
Right.
So we have to see this request, not just as a request, but in the context of our history, and we come to the request itself, there in the context of our history, and how we need to treat with these things, because we have gotten where we have gotten on the shoulders of the others who have struggled essentially for freedom over the centuries.
Right. So I want to jump in here, and I think that's an excellent, opening to sort of put all of this into perspective, to go deeper into the discussion. And I just want to backtrack a bit on the issue of the international law, because it's the goal of international law is to promote peace, order, and cooperation on issues of global concern. Now here is something. Now, unlike domestic law, international law largely operates through the consent of states. And there is no single, and this is very, very instructive here. There is no single global authority to enforce it. And a lot of what we're seeing happening in the world today is contrary to this. And this is where I think the concern's coming. Now, you spoke quite a bit on where we came from, and the time has come for us to build our identity. We have CARICOM, we have OECS, we have all of these things, that has been put in place so that we can work to improve and to develop ourselves. But here is the one thing. The Caribbean does not possess significant wealth. We do not possess significant wealth. And if we bring it home to Grenada, I think the one wealth we have here, we have some really great mines. Some great mines. Not all. We have some great mines. That is probably one of the significant wealth that we have. We don't have, we're looking for oil, but we ain't sure. We don't have gold, we don't have silver, we don't have no precious stones or anything like that. So we depend heavily on imports for our survival, which also now indicates that we need to be more self-sufficient, because clearly we're not. And I think this is one of the big concerns of a lot of people. If Grenada rejects the request, what are the repercussions for us? Because we depend heavily on the U.S. and other countries, but mainly the U.S.
Not too sure if... okay.
Yeah, indirectly.
Somebody was frozen. I'm not too sure if it was me or you. So the last thing I heard, what is the effect of the request?
Yes, the consequences if we reject the request, because we depend largely, maybe indirectly, on the U.S. for a lot of things. The barrels, the U.S. dollars that come through Western Union and all of these things, because we're not a wealthy nation, so we depend on that. All right. The other thing is, and I think we all, from the news and everything, we have a fairly good understanding of the gentleman that we are dealing with. And I think we all would agree that he is not someone we can totally trust or take at his word. So there are two sides to all of this. If we allow it, can the gentleman decide, you know what, I'm going to leave it here? There is nothing we can do about it. If we reject, the gentleman can decide, you know what, and we've already seen our finance minister, his visa was recalled. So we have a good understanding of what can happen from both sides. Where does that place us as a nation as it relates to the response to that request? Or is it a good idea that we should just allow things to go on? Our Prime Minister has not responded yet. There are a lot of people who think it is a great idea that he takes his time, analyze all of this, look at all angles before a decision is made. Now, considering both sides of the coin, where does that place us as a sovereign state, a small sovereign state that is heavily dependent on imports?
Right. So let's start off.
That's a long question, but I'm sure you got the gist of it.
Yes, mm-hmm. I get the gist. Mm-hmm. So let's go to your very first point. Mm-hmm. What are the repercussions? What are the consequences? Mm-hmm. So my first response to that is, why should there be repercussions? And I
could jump in quickly and answer that, because you said it earlier. Might is power. When you have power, you have might. The U.S. is probably the most powerful country.
I'm asking here not from the fact that they would or would not be, right? What I'm saying, the platform, the first point is, why should there be repercussions?
And so there shouldn't.
So first of all, there are certain core principles of international law. Mm-hmm. Core principles. These principles do not apply to the United States or to China or to Canada or to Grenada. These are general principles across the board that apply to all states. All states. And some of these core principles include non-intervention in the affairs of states. And that's related to mutual respect, non-intervention. And not because you are mighty and able to intervene, that you intervene. The right to self-determination of people, whether with respect to politics, culture, or social or economic issues, the right to self-determination of countries. Peaceful coexistence. These are core principles. Mm-hmm. These are the governing principles that guide them. So I want to clear first and foremost, based on these principles, the first point, and I'm not saying it in the context that there would be no repercussions.
Right. Just one sec. Just hold your point. You're going to continue from there. Something you said that I just want to just write on a little bit. Now, based on international law, and it is very important because we've already outlined the goals. The authority of international law rests where? What the source of the authority of international law? And I'm thinking here, my mind is along the lines of the International Court of Justice, because we've heard many nations when I remember South Africa, they took the matter with Israel and Gaza to the ICJ and all of that. So I'm just kind of setting it because I want to know down the line in the discussion, how can we include the ICJ in all of this?
Right, yes. And it's an important question. And that's why the United Nations is the entity that embraces basically all countries of the world, right? The United Nations. And the United Nations, there are different institutions within the United Nations, which include the International Court of Justice, right? So there are issues between states. You don't move in and knock out another state because might is right. It is based on international law principle, the Charter of the United Nations. There's a charter, and when you deal with different states, normally there are treaties. So, for example, what established CARICOM? Right? CARICOM, there are rules within CARICOM. So you had the July 1973 signing of the Treaty of Chaguaramas. And then you had the Granada's Declaration in 1989, which introduced the elements of CSME, which was one of the critical components, CSME. And out of that arose to an institution to deal with disputes. And that institution is the Caribbean Court of Justice. And as we always say when we speak about the Caribbean Court of Justice, it's two courts rolled into one. It's one, a final appellate court, where it replaces the Privy Council when you're dealing with final appeals, but it is also an international court in what you call its original jurisdiction. So if, for example, Grenada and St. Vincent have some dispute over fishing or some trade issue, the coast guards of both countries don't go up the Grenadines and threaten one another and say who crossed the line would be dealt with, because you have an institution there to resolve the dispute with rules, an institution with rules. Just so, the International Court of Justice is governed by rules. There are other institutions of the United Nations. So, for example, you have the Permanent Security Council, which consists of 5 or 6 states, including the United States. And that's where in there are veto powers. So if everybody don't agree, and that's what has been happening, for example, with Cuba and other countries, because some of these countries exercise their veto powers, even though the overwhelming majority of states in the United Nations may vote a particular way. Right? So you still have these issues. But there are the core principles that you sign up to. Right? And whether or not you can enforce it, because you have, for example, you have United Nations troops and so. Troops from the United Nations would go in, peacekeeping troops, in countries that are affected by war and these things. So you have a certain measure of it. But there is the principle when you're operating as a state that you would respect the law. You would respect the law. So for example, and I'm just using these simple examples for the sake of understanding the concepts, because what is critical here is understanding the concepts. No. In the original jurisdiction of the CCJ, one of the cases that people might be most familiar with is the Shanique Myrie case in Jamaica, when the Jamaican landed in Barbados, and she was subjected to all kinds of searches and detained and so. And now a Jamaican, she went to the CCJ and said, my rights under the CSME were violated by the state of Barbados. She sued the state of Barbados and prevailed over that state, where the CCJ ordered Barbados to pay, it was $35,000. No. And Barbados complied. Barbados is a member of the CCJ.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens if Barbados don't pay? The CCJ don't have a military arm that just rolls into Barbados, right? But they're expected to do so, and there would be serious damage, reputational and otherwise, if they don't comply. So, in the wider international community, that is how states operate. And that is why, for example, you have all these different branches of the United Nations that deal with human rights. And they monitor countries every year. And countries have to go and defend themselves and report on how they complied with whatever treaty they entered into, ratified. And so the United Nations monitors. So we might not be able to enforce it militarily or by force, but as a civilized country, you are expected to comply. So I come back now to the issue of repercussions and consequence. And the first question: why should there be consequences? Why should there be repercussions? Where in a situation you are dealing with a country, a sovereign nation, you make a request and there's no problem with making a request. All countries make requests to do different things, including for aid. But if somebody say no, right, you have a right to say no. You tell children in school, in relation to certain things, that you have a right to say no. In fact, there is a popular saying with respect to issues concerning children and people generally: just say no, because you have a right to say no. And especially when a request comes from a nation that prides itself in democracy and freedom. Why can't Grenada, because we are not equal in military might, why can't Grenada say no? That is the mutual respect that exists in international law. Why should a minister's visa be taken away? This is a minister of a democratically elected government. In elections, representing the people, have to travel to the United States as part of the pressure to say yes to certain things that Grenada would prefer to say no to. So in other words, it's not now neither voluntarily. It's you return to the same old centuries aback, where might turns right and you are under the barrel. You are literally under the barrel of a gun if you disagree. If you disagree. And then we talk about democracy and freedom. Now, there are serious principles involved in this, of course, because we are in an unhealthy situation where countries now, because they are bigger, which is not no feature in international law, you don't get no added power because of the size or the power of your military. We have a vote in the United Nations just like everybody else, sovereign states. So while we discuss repercussions and consequences, we also have to internalize this fundamental issue as to why. Which other country attempts to tell Grenada what to do and what not to do and threaten it if you don't comply with their request. So I say all this to contextualize. We are not at war with the United States. We're not at war. It's not the same as a situation we're at war and we're being punished in the war because we fighting and we gaining control. It's not war. We're not in war. We're in peacetime where a request is being made, and we should have the right to say no without any consequences or without any repercussions. And that is what I am simply saying as a starting point. Now, as you say, we know who we are dealing with. We know the history. And therefore know what placed in a unique situation where if no is said, which is the right thing to say, and which is what Grenada wants to say. But then there are all of these other considerations that don't govern any relationship with any other state. So, what are the consequences? We have seen it already. The minister's visa being revoked. And because we are so close, one, and we are so tied in. And again, you know what? What this tells us, the lesson here, and we need to learn the lessons, is that, listen, Grenada is a small state. However, we need to speak as one voice as CARICOM, which in the context of things is still small, but it is powerful. You're talking about 15 plus votes in the United Nations. And these votes are critical in the United Nations. That's where negotiations take place, right? And Grenada's support is needed, the Caribbean support is needed. So despite the fact that we're small, as a bloc, we are powerful. And what it tells us, because Grenada shouldn't have to be dealing with this problem alone. Grenada, it should be a collective CARICOM voice speaking, because we have a common policy that the Caribbean should be maintained as a zone of peace. Right. The tranquility and stability of the Caribbean, that's why people love paradise. That's why they regard the Caribbean as paradise. So I see
yes,
Siddiqui is in. He has made a grand entry.
Yes. So it's let's welcome him, Mr. Sylvester. Good evening and welcome. We are very happy to have you joining the discussion, and of course we hope to hear a lot from you. So welcome.
Thank you, Godfrey. Thank you, Ruggkes, and thanks to the listening and viewing audience. I must say it's been a bit difficult for me, but I'm glad to be here. Under the circumstances, I just actually had a procedure today, and it went on a little longer than I expected. But thank God I'm out of the medical facilities and I'm back home.
Well, that's wonderful. That's good news. That's good news. So we've sort of laid the foundation to all of what is happening. We sort of did a nice introduction with the international law, the goals of international law, where it gets its authority from, which is the ICJ, which I would want us to talk a bit about later in the program, but. As you've joined, I don't know if you were listening before, but I basically asked about the consequences, because there are two sides to all of this. We know that the United States is powerful, and I think people are more so concerned because of the action actions that they've been seeing, some of the actions that have been, put out there by the U.S. president over the past months. And so I think there is some concerns there when you look at the tariffs and all of that. In fact, I think it was last week or the week before where an advertisement in Canada went out where Ronald Reagan spoke about nations and so, and that did not go well with the U.S. president, and so he had called up the talks with Canada regarding tariffs and all of that. So we see all of these things happening, and we understand who we're dealing with. Compared to Canada, we really cannot stand. But I think we all understand we are a sovereign state. Ruggkes made the point, which is very, very critical. We should not be dealing with this issue by ourselves, but as CARICOM, and that would give us a lot more strength, a lot more purpose, and all of that. I would like to get your comments on the issue of both sides of the coin, the repercussions. If we accept, what are the repercussions there? If we don't accept, what are the repercussions on that side as well?
Well, Godfrey, I would like to take a slightly different perspective. In my opinion, one of the things that I think we absolutely need to do in Grenada is to get the vast majority of our citizens aware, because irrespective to whatever position the government takes, it is the citizens that's going to pay the price, yes or no. My personal opinion is that we should say no. But if we say no, based upon the actions of the President of the United States and those around him, there are going to be some consequences. And the populace of Grenada are going to bear the brunt of whatever the President of the United States and his team decides to do. So, it is absolutely important, in my opinion, that for just like this one here on GBN and others throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, make our people aware of what we're dealing with. We're absolutely dealing with a bully, right? There's no doubt about that. We're dealing with a bully. And because of that, our people need to be aware of the consequences of saying yes and the consequences of saying no. Once I believe we are able to achieve some of that, then I think the impact of what is going to happen is going to be lessened, right? And as far as the U.S. is concerned, we have seen the bullying tactics of this particular president. I won't say administration, because you see people resigning left, right, and center. But the President of the United States, you see the bullying tactics that he has basically employed, having a terrible effect on the relations between America and the rest of the world. And unfortunately, small countries like Grenada have to be caught up in this. And it is not easy. We're not China, we're not Russia, to bear the impact of the bullying tactics. So, by and large, some of our people will quickly say, oh, just do whatever we have to do. Whatever they say, let us do it. But the consequences of that is also going to be disastrous. So, you do, you damned. You don't, you damned. But in my opinion, I would say we should not agree unless the government can satisfy the people that whatever is being asked is basically not going to cause any real problems immediately or in the future with our neighbors, then I would say yes. But unless the government can satisfy us, and they have not tried, in my opinion, up to date, as far as I'm aware, to make the public aware of what it is and the consequences of what the request may have for Grenada. So that is my opening statement, my brother.
Right. Excellent. So I have another question I'm going to put to both of you, and I'm going to address Ruggkes first. So we've spoken about the consequences. All right. If we say yes, there are consequences. If we say no, there are consequences. All right. Let us look at them, and I think we have a good understanding, or a better understanding, of the consequences if we say no. What are the consequences if we say yes, and why shouldn't we say yes? Why shouldn't we agree? So here is it. The request is asking for us to temporarily host radar and military personnel. Now, if we and I guess we need to put that into context. Temporary. How long is temporary, or how short is temporary? And I think that is a critical thing here. So my question is, why shouldn't we agree to temporarily host the radar for the U.S.? And we would take the discussion from there. So, Mr. Ferguson, I'll start with you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, right, Godfrey, we cannot fool ourselves. The United States has made it clear it's not other people's saying. It comes straight from the mouth of the President of the United States himself. And in a sense, he re-emphasizes what has been in existence, and he deals with it in a different kind of manner. But the United States has made clear, one, it has no permanent friends, it has no permanent enemies. What it has is permanent interests. Right? So what governs the relationship between states is not about friendship, but about interests, and we have to get that clear. But policy is
didn't the US
first.
Yeah, but didn't the US say, for example, that they have an ironclad relationship with Israel? I mean, doesn't that speak to the type of friendship that the US have with Israel? I mean, and I'm just asking that based on the fact where you said that they are no permanent friends.
So why do you think the friendship is so tight? Right? Because it serves the United States. It serves the United States' interests. It's not about friends for friendship's sake. Look at what happened. The trade war. There are different kinds of wars, you know.
Yeah.
The United States and Canada have been close historically.
Yes.
Probably you can't search for a better friend. And what happened? Permanent interest, trade war against Canada, right? The least of whom you would expect. And why? Because in their view, they want, they make the demands just as they make of Grenada, and if you don't comply, they slap you with tariffs. So this is not some isolated experience with Grenada. It's everybody, the world is experiencing bits of it, right? Now, in answer to your question, listen, when you're dealing with permanent interests, it is not that you do so today and therefore you escape, you know. right? Like those who blackmail, for example, you blackmail today, you get what you want out of it, and then 6 months from now, you come back. So, if 5 requests are made of Grenada, 5 requests are made of Grenada, and Grenada complies with all 5 dutifully, because listen, we want to maintain good relations, we don't want repercussions, we don't want adverse consequences, so they ask and we comply. If a 6th request is made that is in the interest of the United States and that is refused, the 5 prior requests that were complied with do not count. Do not count. The question is, where will it end? And where does one draw the line? That's the point. Now, I always say Nelson Mandela said it best, right? When he was asked a question by a journalist about relations with Cuba and the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization.
Yes.
And the beautiful answer he gave.
Definitely.
Say, your enemy, your problem is that you believe your enemy must be our enemy. He says, your enemy is not our enemy. We have our own friends. We choose our friends. That is what democracies do. That is what freedom entitles you to do. That is what a sovereign state entitles you to do. So if I want to be friends with Godfrey, so Siddiqui would sanction me for that because he and Godfrey have some beef. That's what it comes down to. It's a principle. And where do you, at the end of the day, know how low do you stoop? At the end of the day, that's the question. So, and it does not have to do with, because these are basic principles that apply to all. So we don't have any issue with Venezuela. Venezuela is a friend of Grenada. Venezuela has contributed to health, to housing, you name it. Right? They have contributed. We have no issue with them. They have not threatened us. They haven't threatened to declare war against us. We have no problem with them. If you have a problem with them, then why should we be drawn into it? So then we become an enemy of Venezuela. And on the basis of what? You know, a caller, I just happened to hear a clip, I think it was on GBN, probably beyond the headlines, on Monday, discussing this very topic, but among the youth, and very impressive. They were all very articulate and so. And a question was put, you know, what would you ask? Okay, if you have to give, and what would you ask for, right? And one of the guys, you know, answered and said, you know, listen, well, quicker processing of visas, right? So, you know, I cannot jump back. And there was a caller who called immediately after and said, well, listen, what's the effect? He was shocked with the answer, right? But and that's not putting down the person who answered, because I think they did an excellent job. But that's where the thought process is. If we can get something, what kind of principle is that, right? So, for example, you want me to beat up Godfrey, and I say, well, Godfrey is my friend, so I won't beat him up. And then you say, okay, I'll give you 5,000 to beat him up. So suddenly there is a benefit I can get from beating up Godfrey. So I abandon my principle.
For benefit.
Whatever the nature of the friendship is bought. And you are turned into an enemy because I can get something material. There's a fundamental problem with that kind of reasoning. And so one understands the situation Grenada is faced with. Now, on what then what then would stop another request, right? Another kind of request when you're dealing with a country that is so powerful that once that foot inside, when you say go, it's not when you want them to go, it's when they want to go. Right? Their temporary can become permanent, whatever. They call the shots, in other words. They call the shots. And we are friends. But don't put us into that position because we want to see peace in the Caribbean. We want to see the region. I think there is a collective voice that says, listen, we want the Caribbean to be a place of peace. We're not suddenly we become targets in the Caribbean. In a war, and we know in a war there's irrationality.
Yeah, definitely.
People die in wars, and people look to get their revenge in different ways. So we have to be very careful how we operate. It's not Venezuela ain't moving. Grenada not moving. Grenada and Venezuela will be side by side 500 years from now, unless some earthquake or whatever move it some different place. But the United States will not always be there, right? So at the end of the day, you don't make an enemy out of a principle that you are standing for. And history has shown, and I don't care what anybody says, the reality is people respect you more when you stand for some principle.
Right. So
I'm saying you must stand for something, or you must fall for everything.
Right. Let's bring in Siddiqui, your response to the question. Why shouldn't we agree?
Fundamentally, Godfrey, agreeing to a request like that, as you say, places us firmly in an orbit that pits us against a friendly country, someone that has had a very long-standing relation with us. Only today, Venezuela sent tons of food to Jamaica and also to Cuba. Humanitarian aid because of people who have faced devastation by one of the strongest hurricanes in recent times. I've yet to hear the USA say they're sending humanitarian aid to Cuba. They have indicated they're sending aid to Jamaica. The people of Cuba, they're just as human as the Jamaicans. Yes, they have a problem with the government. But the people of Cuba, they need the help, just like the people of Jamaica need the help. So, choosing friends, we have to choose genuine friends. And, you know, we have had tremendous support from Venezuela. We've had support from America over the years. Many of our people live in America, benefit from living in America. And our people in Grenada benefit from their presence in America. Western Union, barrels, blah, 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 so forth, so on. So yes, we want to maintain a healthy relationship with America and American people. But when an administration decides to take actions that are detrimental to the peace and security of our region, threatening maybe to remove one of our largest sources of income, maybe threatening the university. I remember 2 years ago when there was a protest march in support of our Palestinian people because of the genocide that was being carried out. Immediately, the students in the university were threatened for taking part in that protest. We know what happened in America by the students from the various tertiary institutions that opposed the genocide that was taking place in Gaza at the time. So we see an administration that is hell-bent on suppressing any type of support for people who are undergoing hardships, whether they're in Cuba, whether they're in Palestine, or wherever. We in Grenada have been known to be extremely friendly. We welcome our tourists through cruise and stay-over visitors. We have friendly relations with people throughout the world. And we don't want to be threatened by anyone. We want to have this, as we say, this zone of peace and this peaceful coexistence with others is something that we hold very dear to us. Having a base and military presence in Grenada does not in any way help to ensure that that zone of peace and that atmosphere of peace that is so important to us as a people in Grenada remains. And for that reason, we absolutely have to say we do not want to see boots on the ground. We do not want to see a radar set up in Grenada that may eventually be used in a hostile manner to a friendly country who have helped us over the years. And that is the bottom line.
Okay, excellent. Well, I think we've seen both sides of it. I think we understand, because I think most people were kind of concerned about the repercussions if we said no, and not enough was said about the repercussions if we said yes. So let's invite our callers to hear what they have to say. We have a caller on the line, so let's go to the telephone and see who is with us. Good evening. Hello. Good evening, caller.
Hello?
Yes, good evening.
Hello.
Yes, we're hearing you, caller. Go ahead.
Oh, that's interesting. Greetings,
Yes.
Mr. Augustine.
Yes, greetings.
I trust that Mr. Ferguson and your other guest, Mr. Sylvester, can hear me?
Yes.
I'm
Hallelujah.
hearing you loud and
Yes.
clear, citizen.
Very interesting conversation. Oh, I don't want to take much time. But just to say this. I happen, after a very long time, to coincide in my thinking with the thinking of your guest. Above all, Mr. Ferguson. Everything he has said, pardon, on Monday's program and today's program so far, I coincide. Mr. Ferguson, I want to tease you a bit. Do you know why I coincide with you?
Well, my guess is as good as what you say, but
There's a reason.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
Well, why aren't you
that they
surprised?
coincide.
Well, listen, I'll just
Sorry?
cut it short. Mr. Ferguson, it is simple. What you say is, quote unquote, the truth. Pardon, truth. Truth. You get the drift? When you come clean, Mr. Ferguson, I go with you because it has been tested, proven, some written and unwritten, but they're all facts. Anyone can go back and read it. And therefore I congratulate you. But there's something I want to drop in here a bit. I was too disappointed the other night when this young man, Mr. What's his name? Somebody made a mention to question asked of a young person who aspired to be a politician in this here country. Very soon, I suppose, when we gone. And he was seeing this thing transactionally. How unfortunate for a young person of our country that he is prepared to sell the dignity of our country after all we have been through with the United States and our politics. How unfortunate, disappointed. And I wish they would revisit the thinking on that matter. I know, as it relates to the military component of it. I am of the view, and I've been reading other things where military strategists, and they happen to even convince me more, believe that the United States does not need, and note how I refer to these people. The country is the United States. There is no country in the world called America. When we call them America, we refer to them America. We making them give validity to the Monroe Doctrine of 1823. What he said was true. America belonged to the Americans, yes, but that's from Tierra del Fuego in Argentina to Fairbanks to the north. America is a continent. I just thought I'd drop that in as a matter of glossary. They have everything they need for tracking every missile, every drone, every aircraft. They first reported they had one Poseidon aircraft with these massive circular antennas. There are two of them in the region. These missilistic frigates, or what they call missile-guided frigate, or guided missile frigate, have all that they need. The one that docked in Trinidad, the Gravely, has 2 or 3 of these systems on them. They do not need. They're trying to involve us. That's what they're doing. That's what they're deliberately trying to involve us. They do not need. They have a carrier task force coming in. I don't know how it's far today. I didn't get to exactly where it's in, but it's on its way. Why would they bring a carrier task force to fight drugs? They want to involve us in the mischief. So we, despite the fact that Venezuela has been giving us assistance, and otherwise, let me speak a little faster, it's just one part of it. Because that's what nations do in solidarity with others through diplomatic channels all over the world. So if even we rule that out, they've been good to us, but even we rule that out, Venezuela is a politically independent and sovereign nation state with full independence, which they fought for. And the United States do not have the authority to dictate to Venezuela what they should do and what they shouldn't do.
Right. Okay, well, thank you.
Yes, let me just round this off there. Mr. Ferguson, however, I want to juxtaposition something, maybe correlated to. When I refer to the truth, Mr. Ferguson, the matter related to the schedule was not the truth. We still had to discuss that one, okay? Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes,
have a nice evening, citizen.
Yeah. A very, very interesting comment. I made that comment, I think, last week on one of our programs as it relates to the United States really doesn't need need Grenada for the installation of radar. I mean, they are the most advanced when it comes to military and so they really don't need us. But let's just go back to the telephone quickly before we comment on this. Good evening. Welcome.
Hello?
Yes, good evening, caller.
Straighten me on that, Godfrey, please. Is it the first country Ireland Grenada asked to install these things?
If Grenada is the first country?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm trying to understand the context. But whether we are or not, how does it relate to the issue?
Well, as far as here, they did ask one of the islands in the West Indies, and they told them no.
Okay.
And what could they do about it? So why Grenada can say no?
Okay, I got you. Well, like as I said, and we heard, we are awaiting the Prime Minister to comment. So hopefully, come Tuesday, he should make some remarks on this issue. Yeah.
So let me ask back that question. You doesn't know about any other island what told America no?
I am not sure. I only heard, by the way, a request was made of Antigua, but I'm not certain of that. I don't have any documentation, but I heard that a request was made of Antigua and they refused. But I am not certain, so please don't take that as tobacco well pressed. Okay?
I understand you, but it's on the radio heard that.
Okay. Well, I am not sure. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah.
That's all the question.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. All right. So, Mr. Ferguson, quickly, any comments on the calls that we had so far? We have a couple of calls coming
certainly.
in.
Citizen used a very important term, and that is transactional, right? Diplomacy, you engage, you make requests for different things. But there are certain things that cannot be part of transactions. And that is simply where we'll be operating like mercenaries. That listen, because we get something, and I'm saying this conscious of all the issues, and I make the point too, that as possible where we can get assistance. So at the end of the day, we can't fall into a situation where we are told, listen, if you don't do X, it's more a demand than a request. If it has repercussions for us, that's not really a request, it's a demand. And if we don't carry out the demand,
then we face the consequences. Yeah.
So and then the basis upon which we will be consenting is not a voluntary consent. It is a consent to save our economy, save our people. It's like we are in a state of war. That is what it amounts to. Plain and simple.
All right. Let's
yes.
Let's just go back to the telephone quickly. Good evening, caller. Welcome. Okay, we lost that caller. Siddiqui, you want to comment on anything Citizen said?
I just want to make mention that, yes, we think sometimes that we fight in this battle in Grenada by ourselves. But throughout the region, there are groups throughout the region and people throughout the region who support a position of saying absolutely no to having any radar or boots on the ground in Grenada. Today, it is a request made of Grenada. Tomorrow, it is another country, and then another country. We don't want to be a satellite of anyone. We have operated as independent countries, peaceful countries. We have agreement among ourselves in CARICOM, OECS, so forth, so on. And again, we want to maintain that and to have a decent relationship with whatever administration, whatever president is in the United States.
Okay, let's go back to the telephone. I think we have another caller on the line, or did we lose the call? I think we lost that caller there. Well, let's try again. I think the caller is back. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Yeah, good night.
Yes, good evening.
First of all, I think that we should avoid some of the mistakes we made in the past. Give an example. We had relations with Taiwan. We knew that Taiwan was not a legitimate country, but because of experience and so on, we had relations with them. Then unceremoniously, we cut the ties with them, which left us in difficulty. They took us to court for money we had owing them. It caused embarrassment, and probably we still really know why that. I think the situation is very clear, and I agree totally with both speakers. Ferguson. That, I mean, it's not about, we shouldn't be thinking about consequence. We should be dwelling on principle. The other thing about it is that if we give consent, what we'll be doing will be endorsing the murder that have already taken place in the waters of the Caribbean. We cannot endorse murder because what these people are coming to do is to kill. We know that. Don't pretend. We can't pretend that they're coming for any other thing. It's a kill and to regime change. The other is that it has really created that division in the Caribbean. And we will see what happens in Trinidad in the coming days where there's a fallout in the UNC. And do we want to have fallout in Grenada too? Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, 435-2041. Yes. Let's just go back to the telephone quickly again and see who is with us. Good. Okay, we lost that caller. 435-2041. That's the number you can call and try and make your contributions quickly. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes.
I just want to fact check one of your guests concerning the hurricane and the help provided by America, which he said that America didn't provide any help to Cuba nor Haiti. 8 hours ago on the USA Bridgetown website, Facebook, if you don't have it, or your US website, there was a note release where they gave update on some of the things that they are doing and what President Trump authorized that the U.S. should respond immediately. So just fact checking.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you. All right.
Yeah.
Ruggs. Yeah.
And yes. I think it's important. Not the last caller, the one before the last caller. When he made the statements about the mission. And the killings that have taken place. Now, this is just simply amazing, right? Guys in boats, you have all these submarines, personnel, warships, and folks in little boats are just being gunned down. And not just gunned down, but they are boast about it. How there is a rule of law that exists in the Caribbean, and that rule of law says, listen, when there are drug suspects in our waters, and our Coast Guard intercept them, they are brought in, they are charged, they come before a court, they are tried or they may plead guilty. If they plead guilty, they are sentenced accordingly. Now, how on earth that you can just come in and gun down people on the seas and just simply declare that they are narco-terrorists?
Yeah, that's.
Absolutely no due process, and the amazing thing, you hear somebody else do it. Right?
You know.
Why it is the big and mighty is doing it, so everybody afraid to speak.
Yes, indeed.
Like that violates the rule of law. You cannot, irrespective of who. You cannot just shoot down people on the seas.
Right. Yeah.
And that is why voices, and that's why it's so admirable and somebody made the point I was reading on The Guardian on the weekend. There are 112 women's groups throughout the region condemning what is happening and calling for a zone of peace. The bishops, several bishops in the region, people need to speak on it, because if it's some weakling that do it, everybody want the throat cut. Everybody want the throat cut. Everybody knows silent, because it's the United States doing it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And at the end of the day, you will be admired. Not today. Look at Martin Luther King, who stood in the 60s in the height of racism, right? He stands large today, because he took a stand. He took a stand, and I will say it. One of the beautiful quotes out of that period, one of the beautiful quotes that of Martin Luther King. And imagine, that's when you admire these guys back in the 60s, because it was even not like no, right? In those days, you have millions marching because they are leaders. They are leaders, and in difficult and dangerous circumstances, they rose up. And that quote from him that says, listen, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in times of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. So when everybody making the noise now because, hey, no repercussions, everybody brave, right? Songing powerful. But when a powerful nation does it, everybody remains silent and tries to find some kind of excuse. What excuse could you have for gunning down people on the sea? Could you imagine another country that doing that? The United States will invade that country. Right.
Let's just go back. Let's go back to the. We have a call on the line. Let's go back to the telephone and see who is with us. Good evening, caller. Hello.
Yes.
Yes. Good evening.
Good afternoon, sir.
How are you doing? Yes. Go ahead. We're hearing you.
Okay. All right. Now, I want to congratulate the panel, and I concur with all of the callers and the panel. I think it's a question here of leadership, as Mr. Ferguson outlined. But we have to remember that we have the ship agreement. Yeah? Maybe that is the first big mistake we made by signing. And I think we should perhaps, at this point in time, rescind this agreement and ask the American to get out of the Caribbean waters. But do we have the leaders? We're struggling with making decisions. To me, this is a simple matter. All leaders just have to no is no. Whether there is consequences for either side, we have to concentrate on the security of our country. Yeah? Okay. And I think we have to say it one voice, no, and our leaders have to step up the plate and recognize they have a responsibility to us. Yeah? This cannot happen and shouldn't happen. As I said many times, there is no power in the size of country, but power in the ability of a person to represent the country and the citizens.
Right. Okay.
So we have to step up as leaders and do what we're supposed to do. No is no, and that should be said a long, long time ago.
Thank you very much. Thank you, caller. Yes. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, Siddiqui.
Godfrey, I want to ask a question of Ruggkes. Is it possible for Caribbean lawyers to bring a case against U.S. authorities, just like a case was brought in the ICJ, to some international body, at least for the records, even if you don't get enforcement of it, for these extrajudicial killings? Is it possible?
Well, that's of course. A case can always be made, because listen, there is no investigation you have to do to find out, because there's a boast about it.
Yes.
We had operation 1, 2, 3, 4. First operation, 11 people in a boat. Right? Even our little Coast Guard just capture people and bring them in. We are no submarine. So the point is, and they are acknowledged killings. And they are boasted about. Now, look at this. It's the same thing that was said in 2003 when Iraq was invaded. Listen, Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. So you invade Iraq, you mash up the country, thousands of people are killed. And at the end of the day, it is said Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction. So what you say now? Sorry? Sorry, we made a mistake? And we don't learn from that? And people, the point is, if people speak up, and that's where, as several of the callers alluded to, that's where the strength of leadership lies. You know, we have too much transactional leadership. You know, you're looking at what you could get, right? Either for yourself or others. You don't want to upset the apple cart. But that's not how struggles have been won over the years. It's people standing up for, at the end of the day, standing up for what is right. Because these are the things that you condemn otherwise. You condemn. So, but you don't condemn it now because, hey, the big bad guy is in town. And you fear the repercussions of doing so. But if the Caribbean speaks with a collective voice and leaders, and that's why this matter is not a partisan political matter, right? This matter cries out for all political parties, irrespective of color, to speak with one collective voice. It's like the coming together, independence, we speak about national colors, not individual colors. It calls for unity because a government that has to take the decision wants to feel the strength of the people behind it. It makes it easier for the government to take a position. And that's why it's so beautiful to hear some of the voices, and these are not political voices. Some of the voices you hear, those are religious leaders, and that's what you preach against. So it matters not who does it. What history would remember us for?
Right. So we
hopefully it's not a sellout, right? It's not a sellout, but we stood when the going was difficult, when the going was tough. We stood up for a principle. That is what history will kindly remember us for.
Right. We have some comments from our Facebook viewers. I just want to go through a couple of them. There's a question here, Ruggles. So Ernesto is asking, seeing Grenada is a colony of the British, represented by the Queen, does the US need the okay from the British because the British was upset with the invasion in 83? I don't know if the British was upset about that.
The US needs permission from no one.
Right.
Right? What rules? Again, they have the power, they have the military, they need no permission to go anywhere. And history has established that. What they say, what they demand, that is what must be implemented.
Right.
It might even demand of the United Kingdom itself. So let's not be mistaken about this. Has nothing to do with politics, and that's why Trinidad has to be extremely careful, because at the end of the day, when they can no longer serve an interest. And what happens?
Yeah.
They're left high and dry.
Right. We have some more.
All the enemies made in the Caribbean in the process. that backfires.
Yeah, let me just run through a couple of the comments quickly because our Facebook friends are complaining that we're not taking the comments. So Kenny is saying, do you think if any other country asked the American government to put a military radar on any of their land, do you think they will even think about it? The answer, we as Grenadians have to be more realistic, and there is nothing that could contribute to any Grenadian for putting this on our soil, and once they get the okay, they will never leave. So I say no. Stephen Ramdani from Trinidad, he said if Grenada says no and the US removes the Maduro administration, there is no guarantee the new Venezuela government will be friendly with Grenada. Therefore, Grenada could end up losing both friends. Hezekiah is saying being a friend to America is dangerous and being an enemy is fatal, meaning America only care about America. Let's see what else. Hudson George is saying if the US hadn't kicked the Cubans out of Grenada in 1983, I am sure Cuba would still have military soldiers in Grenada. Someone is also asking why is the opposition treating the radar issue like hot yam? They are afraid to taste. Hudson is saying Grenada was a satellite of Cuba during Maurice Bishop's PRG regime era. What else we got? We got quite a bit of comment. Hudson is going on and on. Natasha says, Mr. Ferguson, you made my night. You spoke the undiluted truth, and I commend you for this. Only the brave and the strong do it like this. Glenroy says the Caribbean island don't speak with one voice. Trinidad and Guyana don't share a zone of peace. All right, so they kind of have a little chit chat between themselves. But let's take another call and then we'll get ready to wrap because time has gone. Good evening, caller. Hello.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening. Yes, go ahead.
Good evening to you. With your guest here.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I want to ask two questions.
Sure.
Mr. Ferguson, I want to ask you a pointing question. If you have to choose, if you have to give the government two principles upon which they should say no to that request, what are those two principles, and you will say, don't give it up on those two bases? Additionally, listen to the opposition leader yesterday in response to a question about the request that was made and why no formal response has come from the opposition. And her response to that question is seriously disturbing. What would you say, or what's your position on the opposition silence, including the former Prime Minister, silence on that request that has been made to Grenada? Considering the importance of that what is your response to that two questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. All right.
So quickly, I think I covered it.
The first one, yes.
Yeah,
earlier.
Yes, let me
quickly
just say we are a sovereign nation. We are a sovereign nation. You can make requests of us, but we have a right to refuse the request. And so it starts off on that principle. And we ought not to be punished for a position that we have the right to take. One. And secondly, the purpose of the request is for hostile action against a friend of Grenada that Grenada has historically been friendly with. And therefore, as I used all the examples, if we instinctively will say no, but the reason why we're saying yes is because we are forced to say yes, and threats are being made, which violates the principles of international law. We are a sovereign, independent nation, and we have nothing. We are not in war with the United States. We are not in war with Venezuela. And our country ought not to be used, and we ought not to be drawn in to what is the intention as declared is regime change. At the end of the day, the president himself has said it. It starts off as narco-terrorists, and then you bring all this artillery in the country, and then when war starts, you don't know what the consequences could be. We are not far away from Venezuela, and we can get drawn into. We don't know how that war would go. So that's the first thing. I didn't pick up everything said in relation to the second question about the opposition. But my point, I would reiterate that, listen, this is not a political issue. It is a national issue, and it would be great to see. Could you imagine if, like, the former Prime Minister makes a pronouncement? A pronouncement, decisive pronouncement on this. Let's not use it for narrow politics. There are many other issues that can be used on this matter. Like P.J. Patterson, when he spoke, P.J. Patterson, 90 plus years old, and he made a strong statement on it. And when leaders speak at that level, they have followers. And others are inspired and motivated to speak.
I actually heard the former Prime Minister, you know, I was a little taken aback that they were not consulted, they did not see any documentation, and so they're not going to comment, they're not in a position to comment on anything like that. But that being said, that is it.
So to deal with that, there should be some engagement. And we should treat it as a national issue. Non-partisan, non-politics. It's really a nation's issue.
It is.
Because the consequences are for the nation.
So we take a final call and then we would move to wrap. Good evening, caller. Hello.
Good night. The show still going on?
Yes, go ahead, please.
To Mr. Robert Ferguson, tonight you said one sensible thing, which is you can't tell America what to do. They can do whatever they want to do. And secondly, I want to find out your thoughts on the bombing of the boats of the cartels and the police operation that has killed 132 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. How do you compare another nation taking such actions against its citizens? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think you spoke on the issue of the boats.
I spoke about I dealt with the issue, and I'm not too sure in terms of the first point, where no country, no sovereign, forget about whether it's the US or Venezuela. We're dealing with rule of law issues. No country can dictate to another country what to do and what not to do. And there should be no consequences for any country. In the normal diplomacy, we can make all the requests, and if Grenada makes requests for assistance. And in fact, what we should be focusing on in this period, the United Nations, they have their 17 Sustainable Development Goals, trying to end poverty in the world, education for all, health for all. That is where energies should be expended. That's where we have to educate our people and ensure that these goals we do, we play our role in our respective countries to ensure that we can meet those goals.
Yes, indeed.
Not war. This is not 1945 or 1918. We want to stop a third world war. And if folks feel this is about Venezuela and politics, listen, the US has cancelled the visa of judges of the International Criminal Court because they rule against Israel. Right? No, look at this. They have withdrawn privileges. The international bar associations and those bar associations, they have correctly condemned it. Right? And even a simple thing as countries attending these climate change conferences and so, because the US has a different take now on climate change and the environment.
Yes.
They say all of this is fake, right? Look, we're having all these hurricanes and heat and complaining. And so what the threat is? If you even support that, right? So it's not something like Venezuela and you stop there because it's Venezuela. It is what is in the U.S. interest. And of course, they have the right to pursue what is in their interest. But we also have the right to pursue what is in our interest and what is in the interest of the Caribbean. And what is in the interest of the Caribbean is to maintain the Caribbean as a zone of peace. If we live in a democracy where freedom is supposed to reign, then we have a right to tell the epicenter of freedom and democracy, listen, you ask us, that one we can't deal with. We can't be transactional with our friends. You can't make us mercenaries and offer silver and gold so that we can attack our friends. We are willing to help elsewhere. Send up a lot of spice in the United States, nutmeg and cinnamon and these things, whatever we can do, but not get us involved in war. And we should speak with one voice on that issue.
Yes, indeed. Siddiq, we're out of time. We've already taken 15 minutes more than what we are required to, but very much needed.
Quickly,
yes.
I would just want to urge quickly that this is a national issue, and my hope is that we find a mechanism, especially for the young people, TAMCC students, SGU students, fifth form students in the social studies programs, and throughout the churches, etc., that we find a mechanism to bring to these young people what the issues are all about. If the government has a position, bring it to the people, bring it to the young people. They are the future. Whatever position they take is going to affect us for years to come. So don't have this issue as just a few of us on a radio program. Take it to the people, and that is my desire and wish that I wish to leave with the program tonight.
Right. Thank you very much.
Concur with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Lovely.
Yes.
Gentlemen, I really thank you very, very much for coming on and having the discussion. I know we've had quite a lot of people following us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and we thank them for saying us. Thank you for your comments, your questions. We're not able to take all the comments, but we know you there. We acknowledge you, and of course, we look forward to future engagements, because this is not a matter that should be politicized. It's not a matter that should just be spoken of and dropped, but it's an issue that we have to continue putting out there, as Siddiqui said, so that our young people can have a better understanding. And as I said earlier, I think that too many people were looking at the consequences for not accepting or saying no to the request, and not understanding the consequences of accepting or saying yes to the request. I think we now have a better understanding of that, and we will continue to put the information out there. Of course, come Monday, Mr. Ferguson will be with me again at 6 o'clock, and we will continue the discussion to put the information out there so that we all can benefit. So whatever decision is made, we would be in a good place and we would feel a lot more comfortable. Gentlemen, thank you all again. Thank you very much. I just want to close by reminding people that the way we started on the issue of international law, it is a set of rules and principles that govern the relations between sovereign states and other actors. The goal, of course, is to ensure peace, including human rights, trade, disarmament, all of that, very, very important. So, it's important important that we know where we are, we know what we're involved in, so that, when these discussions and these issues arise, we are able to take a position, knowing that the position we take is one that we stand for and we believe in. Thank you very much, everyone. Do have a good night, and be sure to join us tomorrow evening at 8:30 for We Culture. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you.